Hi there, I'm Emma, and this video is going to be some breathing exercises to help you soften and release your pelvic floor. So most people have heard of a Kegel, where you draw your pelvic floor in and up, but that isn't necessarily the right place for everybody to start. It's very common for people's pelvic floor, it's like a bowl of many different tissues at the base of your pelvis. It's very common for the pelvic floor to be kind of contracted or tight and therefore weak. If you can imagine you've been like holding a fist like this for a really long time, your hand, if it was going to go to pick up something heavy, might be too tired to do that. So a lot of people's pelvic floor is squeezing all the time. So doing a Kegel, like squeezing this more, is kind of counterproductive. So in order to strengthen the pelvic floor, for a lot of people, it makes sense to back way up and learn to soften the tension in the pelvic floor. Myself, doing pelvic physiotherapy with a really fantastic physio, we did 6 weeks of these kind of breathing exercises, as well as pelvic floor massage. So I really recommend finding an experienced pelvic floor physiotherapist. Mine is Carrie Martin Verbanovic in Kitchener-Waterloo. She has a long wait list, but she's very worth waiting for. So we're first going to practice some breathing where we start to send our breath lower down into our lungs to help our diaphragm move downward. And your diaphragm and your pelvic floor have they move together. So as you inhale in your diaphragm, which is the band of muscles that are at the base of your rib cage, as you inhale, your diaphragm moves down and your pelvic floor also moves down. And then as you exhale, your diaphragm moves up and your pelvic floor also moves up. So there's this kind of together movement happening. But a lot of the time, folks are breathing more in the accessory muscles at the top of their chest. They're breathing just because of habits or stress. And that doesn't allow the diaphragm to do this beautiful down, up movement. And that also means that the pelvic floor doesn't get this opportunity to do this kind of jellyfish-like movement. So we're going to practice this breathing exercise to begin lying on our fronts, just so we can feel it come into the back a little bit more. So on a yoga mat, I wouldn't say lie on a bed because you want a fairly firm surface to lie on so that your breath will actually move up into your back. You can rest your forehead down like this. I'm just going to stay up so that my voice doesn't get muffled. But if you're down with your forehead on your hands, your elbows can be wide. Just take a few moments to observe your breath as it is. And just where do you feel the movement of your inhale and your exhale? And then take a few moments to see if you can move your breath a little further down in the direction of your pelvis, like you're breathing to the lowest part of your lungs. And because your belly is resting on the floor, often when we breathe low into our lungs, the belly moves forward. But the floor is kind of stopping the belly from moving forward, so instead the movement will come up into the back. And it might even feel like a nice little bit of a stretch for some of the muscles in your mid-back. As you imagine your lower lungs filling, you might imagine your diaphragm pressing down into your organs. And see if you can imagine with your breath a synchronized movement of your pelvic floor which is shaped a little bit like a bowl. Softening kind of down towards your feet as you inhale. And then moving back up as you exhale, as the breath moves out of your lungs. You might do a couple of breaths where you exaggerate this breath. So send the breath low down into your lungs and let it broaden and widen your back. And then let it softly exhale. And maybe do that 2 more times where you exaggerate the breath, broadening into your back. And release. Good. 1 more time. Good. Let's come up to sitting now and see if we can feel that movement of the breath lower down from a sitting position. So you can sit on a chair or the floor, whatever's comfortable, as long as you feel like you can lift your head upright. This time, bring your hands to the sides of your ribs. And see if you can feel, especially the lower parts of your ribs, expanding as you inhale. And contracting a little bit as you exhale. And just take note of your pelvic floor, that region kind of just above your genitals, the bowl of your pelvis. And if in this position you can feel some engagement down there, and if it's possible to start to let the fist unfurl. It's a little hard to relax your pelvic floor in a seated position. We're only here just to experiment momentarily with feeling the movement of the breath downwards. But the best place to position to do this in is actually with the legs raised up onto a surface. So you could use a chair, you could use a bed, as long as the bed isn't too high. You might use a low couch. You'll need a blanket or a pillow to put under the back of your pelvis. But basically, bring your hips close to the base of your chair or bed. Bring your hands behind you. Lift your calves up onto the chair and then lie back. And then once you get there, you might press into your heels or into your feet to lift your pelvis, slide the blanket underneath you, and then return your calves to the chair. If the chair or the bed surface is really high, this won't feel great, so a lower chair or a lower bed. Once you're in this position, your pelvic floor muscles no longer have to engage at all. They can relax. So just take a moment to notice that area of your body and what you can track about the amount of engagement, tone, or tension. So just observing at this point. We're not doing the breathing yet, just observing. All right, we're going to try that same breathing exercise where we're moving the breath into our lower lungs. But we're also going to add a sense of softening the pelvic floor, both on the inhale and on the exhale. So as you inhale, let your breath move downwards in the direction of your pelvis. And imagine that your pelvic floor is softly opening like a rosebud. And as you exhale, see if you can keep that sense of opening or softness. Try that a couple more times. It might feel very difficult to sense. But if you pay attention to any part of your body for long enough, you'll begin to be able to track some sensations there. You might place your hands on your low ribs. And that's just to track that your breath is indeed moving down. As you inhale, your hands, your ribs lift a little and broaden. And another image you could use is to imagine your pelvic floor is melting. So as you inhale, there's a melting sensation. And as you exhale, that melting continues. Let's add one more thing to the breathing. See if you can breathe in for a count of 5 through your nose gently. And then breathe out through a pursed mouth like you're blowing out a birthday candle for the count of 7. Breathing in for the count of 5 through your nose. Melting butter or melting pelvic floor. Rosebud opening. Exhaling for the count of 7. Pushing through your pursed lips like you're blowing out a birthday candle. Let's take a break from that, just because doing that more than a couple times in a row might make you lightheaded. And let's go for a couple more minutes, trying that slow inhale to the count of 5 through your nose, slow exhale to the count of 7, blowing out steady stream birthday candles. Pelvic floor softening and melting or opening like a rosebud as you inhale. And continuing to be soft and melting, opening as you exhale. And just do that count of 5, count of 7 breath a couple times, then give it a break. Let your breathing resume its regular rhythm. And then try that. Inhale for 5, exhale, blowing out for 7. 2 more times once you feel ready. And you might try this exercise, legs on a chair, height under your pelvis, for 8 minutes, 10 minutes, a few times a week. And you might notice in between times if and when you might be holding your pelvic floor kind of tightly when you're going about your day to day. And there's lots of additional benefits to this legs on the chair, slow breathing. You might already feel some of the relaxation response or your nervous system down regulating occurring. So when the video ends, you might take a few moments rolling to your side and letting yourself recalibrate before moving on to the rest of your day. Thanks so much for trying out this pelvic floor release, softening tension. See you next time.